Hey, what's up everybody? It's Atominator. So I did a poll the other day to ask what video you guys wanted me to do next, and the overwhelming majority voted for this topic. So here it is. 2018 Shawn Rhoden versus 2019 Brandon Curry. The battle of the Mr. Olympias. Let's take a look as I go through the mandatories and see who comes out on top. Okay, well, spoiler alert, but before we even do this, I can tell you right now it's Shawn Rhoden. Okay, I'm pretty much 100% confident that if Shawn had competed this year and managed to duplicate this physique, he would have won. His conditioning was just miles ahead, and he's far superior in the lower body, so that likely would have been enough to defeat the likes of Brandon Curry. And I think most people would agree with that. But where it gets tricky is when we start going pose for pose, because Brandon's thickness and greater muscularity through the upper body give him a distinct advantage in many of these comparisons. In fact, I think Curry probably wins more poses than Rhoden, so you can certainly make a strong argument for him here. It's definitely not going to be a cakewalk for Shawn, so let's take a closer look and see how they stack up. The front double biceps is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. You can see that Curry's got him soundly beat through the arms. Those biceps and triceps are just so massive and round, whereas Rhoden's are relatively lean and flat. His chest and delts also show more thickness and pop. They're very comparable through the lats and abs, but I'd give Rhoden a slight edge there for a little bit better definition through the midsection. When we're talking about the legs, that's Rhoden all day. It's a no-brainer. There's not a single pick or angle where Brandon beats him in the lower body, so Rhoden cleans up from the waist down. Overall, I think Brandon is more impressive from a muscularity standpoint, but from an aesthetic and conditioning perspective, this pose has to go to Shawn. I think if they were to stand on stage together under the same lighting, this one would be extremely close, but Shawn's added polish would give him the edge. He literally looks like a bronze statue here. It's just a beautiful pose for him, and that's why I would give him the nod in the front double. The front lat spread is a little more clear-cut. Brandon takes this one because his lats flare out wider and his chest is considerably thicker and more striated. Obviously, Curry also looks better through the arms, and even his midsection is looking tighter than Shawn's here. Now, Rhoden absolutely destroys him through the quads, no doubt. They show tremendous sweep and very good separation. The calves, however, are barely a factor here because unless you've got Flex Lewis or Dorian Yates type development in that area, calves just aren't very noticeable when viewed head-on from the front. So Rhoden simply lacks the firepower here, and Curry takes this one quite handily. Alright, and looks like we got another intriguing battle in the side chest. They both look great in their own ways. It's tough to go wrong with Brandon, as his pecs are incredibly thick, almost Ronnie Coleman-esque in this shot. The shoulders and arms are huge and full, the abs are locked in, and even his legs look quite respectable from the side. Rhoden's chest is much flatter and his arms aren't as round, but he's showing a lot sharper detail from head to toe. The outside of his leg is insanely chiseled, and one could argue that his lower body practically wins him this pose on its own. It's honestly hard to make a call here because they both look fantastic, but I gotta go with Rhoden for the conditioning factor. This one's very close though and could go either way. In the back double biceps, you gotta lean towards Curry. Rhoden still looks more polished. His glutes, hams, calves, and even lower back are all much more defined. Even his waist appears smaller from this angle, but Brandon is just too much for him upstairs through the back and arms. His traps are thicker, the lats are meatier, and his bis and tris and shoulders are simply overpowering. Still, even though I give this one to Brandon Curry, it's a lot closer than it ought to be, considering that back and arms are Rhoden's weakest body parts and probably Brandon's strongest. Curry also takes the rear lat spread to sweep the back poses 2-0. This is probably Rhoden's weakest pose, largely because his execution needs work. The way he's pitching his head forward like that and rounding his back helps pop out the traps maybe, but it takes away from the width through the lats and hampers his V-taper, which is generally pretty good but doesn't showcase very well here. Brandon's hitting this one a lot better, standing more upright like Dorian Yates used to in order to maximize back width. He's displaying some nice separation between the traps and lats, and you can see how low his lats insert, helping to create that coveted tapered look. Of course, Shawn blows him out of the water from the waist down as always, but it's not enough. Side tricep is another interesting one. On paper, I don't think too many people would bet against Brandon Curry, as his triceps are leaps and bounds above Shawn Rhoden's. And here from the side, in this conventional side tricep, I definitely got to give him the nod. They both look terrific with the tight washboard abs. Rhoden's beating him in the legs, but Brandon's much thicker through the chest. The triceps itself goes to Brandon hands down. His lateral head is so much thicker, and the long head so much rounder compared to Shawn's skinny little horseshoe. It's no contest when we're talking strictly about the arms. However, when they twist to the side a little more, now Shawn fares much better. He was smart to do this because it downplays the triceps while putting more focus onto the midsection and quads, two of his best body parts. I still think Brandon looks excellent here, but Rhoden arguably edges him out now, if only by a hair. Don't get me wrong, I still think Brandon takes the side triceps, of course, but it ended up being closer than one might have initially assumed. The ab and thigh is the first pose that I would give decisively to Shawn Rhoden. Brandon looks solid here as well. I mean, Brandon is solid in pretty much every pose, he doesn't really have a weak one. But Rhoden's legs and even his midsection are truly a cut above. He's just so completely sliced and diced through the abs and obliques, even the serratus anterior. Plus, you gotta love the feathered quads. This one's honestly a blowout, guys. Brandon looks really good in his own right, but Shawn Rhoden's ab and thigh is simply world class, especially by modern day standards. He also takes this side version. It's not a separate pose, just a different variation on the standard ab and thigh, and again, all that detail through his core and down the side of his leg is too much for Curry to handle. Just check out Shawn's obliques here, they look like gills, man. It's like little fingers of muscle running beneath his skin, it's crazy. You typically gotta go back to the 90s to see definition like this. Brandon looks great too, he's definitely better than Shawn through the arms and pecs, but those are the only areas where I'd put him ahead. Now we come to the final pose, the most muscular. And you'd probably figure that Curry should have this one in the bag, given all his extra mass that he's packing through the upper body, but I don't think it's so cut and dry. In fact, I would actually award Rhoden the win here in the hands on hip, because I feel like this is his best, most muscular, and a highly underrated pose for the guy. The hands on hip is a great choice because it downplays the arms while highlighting the delts, midsection, and quads, not to mention his excellent shoulder to waist ratio. Brandon looks great here as well, especially through the bis, tris, shoulders, pecs, and traps, but ultimately it just doesn't have the same wow factor for me. Probably because it's like an inferior, less conditioned version of Phil Heath. Maybe if Curry had the same sort of deep cuts in his abs and quads, I'd change my mind, but he doesn't, so I prefer Shawn Rhoden in this one. When Curry gets into the crab, though, I think now he wins. You can note the uncanny resemblance to Phil once again, and for the record, I actually think he looks better here than Phil does nowadays because he isn't spilling over in the stomach and spoiling his lines. The crab is a great shot for him because it highlights his incredible upper body, while de-emphasizing the lower body because of the way he's hunched over and placing his hands. Though it has to be said, his legs actually look pretty decent here. You can see how big and wide they are with those massive adductors. Rhoden looks nice and aesthetic in this one, but he simply doesn't have the bellies through the arms to do the hands clasp justice. His triceps in particular are looking super flat and really let him down. I love his quads and his overall shape, but I gotta go with Brandon and would ultimately have to give him the nod in the most muscular pose. Alright, that's a wrap, guys. Just to recap, I have Brandon actually winning 5-3 on the mandatory comparisons. The only poses I gave to Shawn were the front double biceps, side chest, and ab and thigh. The side triceps, most muscular, and back double were all probably closer than they had any right to be, but those went to Brandon, along with both lat spreads. So yeah, it bears repeating at this point that I still think Rhoden would have defeated him convincingly in real-life competition. You gotta remember that Phil also probably beat him going pose for pose last year, and yet he still lost. So let's just put it this way. If Shawn could upset a very good version of Phil Heath in 2018, then there's no way this slightly off version of Brandon Curry is besting him either. Anyway, guys, that's how I would break it down, but let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you have winning each pose and why? I'd be interested to hear it. But thank you all for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more bodybuilding analysis like this if you haven't already. As always, this has been the Tominator signing off, and I'll be back!